We could just go up Box Hill.
I know a fantastic place we could film on the top of Box Hill.
Yeah, and there'd be space for it.
Yeah, let me just phone someone. Hold on. How you doing? There we go.
I go riding motorbikes with Mark here and there. We catch nice days, and I said to him, "Hey, why don't we film a conversation together?" He runs a New Frontiers church, and I'm just kind of interested in, at the moment, what kind of church would I return to. So we were talking about his church specifically, and had a conversation really about, well, what kind of does success look like with churches? What should church be about? What should church leadership look like? And we cover a lot of ground. We later on speak about sort of women in the church, and New Frontiers, I don't know if you know, don't encourage or don't allow women in leadership, or as they call it, elders. And he kind of provides some rationale for that, and I'm not trying to throw him under the bus, but I say, as in our conversation, I don't understand why they don't recognise that. Maybe you have views on it, and do sort of put it in the comments. But yeah, we have a great conversation, and I've cut it up. I think it was like an hour and a half. He gets quite cold at the end, and you might notice at the end. But I've chopped it up, so it's about half an hour, 40 minutes, something like that. I hope you enjoy it and appreciate it, and I think we cover some really important aspects. Yes, it's quite a soft conversation. Some of you criticised me for that, which is hilarious. I'm not a theologian, I'm not trying to push that. I'm just looking at it from very much a personal point of view. And I'm kind of interested, what should church look like in the 21st century? So we cover that. Hope you enjoy it, and please comment, like, subscribe, and all the other stuff. And appreciate you watching this. Thank you. Right, so where are we?
Box Hill.
Yeah, we've just you came to mine. We took ages fanning around with all this stuff. Then we went to Rikers and saw that it wasn't just full of guys in their mid-50s.
No, there were
and
some people
70s.
who seem to know each other, which is an encouraging thing. So,
And then, there's a plane. We'll just have to deal with that, I think.
and I think as a church, if we can do anything, or the things that we can do can be that we meet people where they're at, and in what we do display God's love for them, and actually say there can be hope in your life. There is an answer, and I think so much of it is just getting alongside people and listening to them. Sometimes without giving any answers. I mean, one of the things that always strikes me as someone who works for the church, who's a pastor in a church, is that I can spend an hour with someone who is in the depths of a crisis, a moment in their life. They just don't know whether they're coming or going, and I can spend an hour with them, and at the end of that hour they'll say, thanks, that was so helpful, and all I've done is listen, and occasionally gone, yeah, that's tough, that's really difficult. So there's something about people being able to unload and just talk, and that is the beginning of, I think, helping those that are lost.
And interestingly, it takes a unselfish decision to be able to be the person that listens to that. I had a friend who's busting up with his girlfriend. He had a baby with her, and he came over to mine, and it was the morning. I'd had some work stuff I was fed up with, or I haven't had much work, or whatever. I wasn't in the best of moods, and he just started offloading with all the emotion. I said, I can't do this. If you keep speaking to me like that, I'm going to have to ask you to go away, because I haven't got the energy for it.
Yeah.
And I hadn't prepared. I hadn't prayed. I wasn't thinking, I need to be prepared for him to come talk to me. Yeah. I was like, actually, just sod off. Like, I didn't quite say it, but I raised my voice. I said, I can do that too. I can speak to you like that as well. And what are you expecting just speaking to me? Now, had I been prepared and knew that my job was actually to listen and just love him, would that not have been so much better?
Yeah.
So it requires something of you that costs. Is kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it's a challenge, and not everyone has the capacity to do that. I mean, that's not to say every situation you throw my way, I'm going to be absolutely comfortable with that, no problem at all.
Tough.
But I think it's even as a church, signposting people to help. Now, obviously, you could say yes, but your motive is that you want to, at some point, tell them about Jesus. Of course we do, but I think this is an expression that I borrowed from someone else, and I thought that's a great thing, is when, as a church, if we want to be relevant to society and we want people to know there's a God in heaven that loves them, and we want people to know Jesus, the thing that we don't want to do is trip them up before they get to meet him. And so I think our initial contact with people, whatever it is we're doing, whether they come along on a Sunday morning, which I think is a rare thing for people just to rock up at church, because this is, I've woken up this morning and I just need to go to church.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah, it does happen.
It does happen. But more than that, I think, as a church, with the different ministries we do and the different forms of trying to reach the community we do, it's how do we engage with people without tripping them up with a comment or a raised eyebrow or something that just says to that person, yes, well, I know you think that, I know you're saying that, but actually let me just now start telling you. We want people just to experience, obviously, God's love through us, because God uses broken human beings to be his ambassadors. And if we're going to be an ambassador of Christ, we have to do it in such a way where we actually get them to meet the person we want them to meet, rather than put them off immediately. And I think so often in churches they can walk through the door, and you've seen that person there, they have and their experience of church, if that's reflected through the people they first encounter in church, and they happen to meet the person who says something that's probably not right for that moment, you're not going to win.
And in that individual sense, I totally get that. And after this question, I want to ask then about how we put people off generally. But let's quickly then talk. So 20 years ago, again, this is how I do youth work. How do I create an environment that is loving and supportive of that young person first? But I was measured on, does that person join the youth club? Does that person go to the church? Does that person, if it was a Baptist church, become a member? Now, have you got to a stage where it's like, hopefully, and if they want to, then great. But how do you, as a church leader, and you said it earlier, success, but what does success look? Does success look like those 300 or 200 people become 600? Does it become we've planted a church? Or is it that no, we've got people that really care for each other? Or like what? How are you measuring what that is?
I mean, this is a great question, and funnily enough, I was thinking about this morning. It's funny, and it's great that you've asked me this question about success. What is success? What does success look like? And one of the things that church leaders love to talk about is how big's your church?
Yeah, that's all they do.
How big's your church? How big's your building? Have you got another building? You've got a building project and the rest of it. And
have you been asked that during your sabbatical?
Yeah, I haven't been asked it during the sabbatical. No, I think I've managed to steer clear of people asking. In fact, when I've been visiting churches and people say, "What do you do?" I just say, I'm just looking around. And, I work for a charity or something," which is it's the truth. It's not a lie. So you don't get into that. But one of the interesting things about numbers, because numbers is obviously it could be perceived as a measure of success. And I was thinking about this, and numbers are important, because if you've got a church and you're faithfully meeting every morning and you've got one person coming along, you got to think. And you've been plugging away for years.
Say it's 12. Say it's 12 or 15, just because one's unreleased.
Okay, let's say. Okay, there are churches I know where there are 20 or less who meet regularly on a Sunday morning. Then you have churches in Red Hill, and there are a number of churches that are, have 2, 3, 4, 500 plus. A couple of churches. One church in particular has 500 plus. Which church is most successful? Now The 500. I don't know how you. I don't know how if that answers. I think a church to be successful, or what do we measure success on? I think is how well we are accommodating people of any, whether they are from a church, not a church, whether they're from a different background, different sexual orientation, whatever it may be, or differing sexual orientations, as opposed to this kind of person will go to church, this kind of person won't. If people are coming through the front door,
yeah,
and again, this is a borrowed expression, we want to keep the front door very, very wide and the sort of back door to exit the church very, very narrow. How do we accommodate all the different people that come through the door?
But you're still using the language of the "Are you 200? Are you 500?"
Yeah,
even there though.
Yeah, I am, and I think where is success? I think it's whoever becomes part of the church community, they stick in a way that is meaningful to them on their journey, as opposed to if you're part of this community of people, if by this date you haven't done this and by this date you haven't done that, but then we need to get the numbers, we need to, you haven't been baptized yet, you haven't made any commitment that we're aware of, therefore are we wasting our time? I think it's more than that, because people's journeys are varied and so different, and I think success looks like, how do you meaningfully engage with the community you're in, but not be so focused on the growth, or so focused on numbers that it takes your eye off the people coming in. But I would also say that numbers do matter, in as much as if you are seeming to be having no impact at all on your community, and you have a faithful group of people who would say they're part of the church, and it is maybe 15, 20, 25 people, although it might be a wonderful church, it might be a wonderful time together, I would ask the question, what is it that these churches are doing that is attracting people but we're not doing? But at the same time, and again, this is where you hold these things in tension, because a huge church doesn't necessarily equal a healthy church that's got it right and is having an impact on the community either. So I think you have to have your eye on all of these things and ask relevant questions at relevant times to see exactly what's going on. Pastoral issues, whatever they may be. But actually, we do work as a family. We do work, and that I'm sure there are many hundreds of thousands of churches in the world where that is effective and that is good. But I think there's a level that perhaps we haven't quite got to, and I think it's this can be reflected in perhaps people listening to this, they might not even, or watching this, who might not go to church, but I think everyone can think of someone in their lives that is a lot worse off than they are, and really could do with maybe 100 quid posted through the door would make a huge difference to them. But the question is, well, who's going to do it? Are you going to do it? And this doesn't have to be in a church context. Or this person's really struggling this month to pay their mortgage or their rent, or this person's struggling to get and that you could do it. Everyone knows someone they could help.
Yeah.
Who's going to do that then? Is it those who are responsible? Is it the government? Is it the church leaders? Perhaps you could do that, and I think there's something about that attitude or that way of thinking where a lot of the responsibility to reflect Jesus, even to those in the church family, lies on individuals in the church family, and also for people who don't know Jesus at all. The responsibility doesn't just lie on, it's the welcome team's responsibility to speak to that person, or that sounds a bit heavyweight. You'll need to get one of the church elders to do it. Actually, no, we're all part of this, and we all have to play our roles. And I think there's something about that I find very interesting.
Which sounds amazing. The only thing is, when you get to that level where everyone sees their place as an active role, then that means that the information keeping that often happens. So the last thing, I don't want it to end on a downer, but the question I wanted to ask was, the shop window of many churches is negative. So the Church of England, which I'm closest to, it was child abuse, sexual abuse, financial issues, and a lot of that has been down to either celebrity, whether it's just a vicar of the local parish, or celebrity for calling themselves a mission, their ministry or whatever. There's this very odd power that's attributed to the person, the man generally, but women as well at the front, whether that's national or local. So that's one issue. The other issue has been like culturally. So more typically in the sort of churches like yours, it's kind of heavy shepherding. So there's a sense that someone forgets their inner independence. They have opportunity to walk away from God as much as to walk to Him. They're not allowed. They feel like their agency is taken away. There are other aspects of the celebrity thing of Terry Virgo, and I replied to a tweet of his a couple of months ago. He didn't reply, but he said people are really nervous with all the reputation around church leaders at the moment. Church leaders need to be more brave in the way that they lead, and I was like, well, there also need to be there needs to be safeguarding in place. There needs to be accountability. There needs to be there needs to be a response to sin. We can't just hide it and pretend it didn't happen. So the question I suppose I'm asking, and based on what you just said, is how do we, if someone sees someone, whether it's financial or they just know they haven't got anything going on, like on a Friday night, and you're going out, you can't really be bothered to invite them over for a meal because they're just a bit of a hassle. They're slightly on the spectrum or whatever. But you do it. I think there also needs to be that question asking from everyone. And I left the last church I worked in because the vicar said to me in a group of 20 of us in the staff meeting, Sam, before you ask questions, you need to gain some weight. Before you make more suggestions like that, you need to gain some weight. And I thought, you shouldn't have to say that. You've employed me. Mm-hmm. I'm here because you've employed me. I shouldn't have to now demonstrate the loyalty card. This is a HTB church. And I thought, so to your point, I was going, let's do this thing. I was excited to be there. I'd only been there 3 months or whatever, and I could see a way of doing something different. But he shut me down straight away.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things we could talk about there.
No, I know.
I mean, I think that, just to address the thing of the leader, the celebrity leader, whatever it may be. I mean, that's obviously, there are many examples we could give where that's gone very badly wrong. I think on that point, I help lead a church with a bunch of other guys, and at the heart of everything we do in leading, there has to be absolute openness and honesty, and people able to say what they want to you. And I really mean that. They have to be able to say what they want. So if they see a crack, if they see something that doesn't look right, doesn't sound right, it probably isn't right, there has to be open conversations, and there has to be permission given and permission taken, so we can talk to each other in a way that's going to be healthy. When people find themselves in a situation where they feel unable to talk to the person who they perhaps think they really, you have to address these things. I know it seems so obvious, but when someone reaches a point of, I don't know if I'm the person who can say that, or if I do that, the repercussions of this are going to be huge. Then that's kind of a bit of a red flag. I think openness and honesty has to be there, but it's also the hardest thing, because I don't want to say it. I don't want to say it, but we've all noticed it. Oh, well, maybe it'll go away. And it's a difficult thing. With regards to the enthusiasm or people feeling that they have their toes being trod on, I mean, one of the things I think is key in discipling people, I use that word discipling, where you're wanting to lead them in everything that God has for them, is if you can recognise someone in something in someone that is so good that you can see them getting to where you are and actually excelling in it and doing a better job of it, then that should be celebrated. I think, in the world of, I used to work in advertising, marketing. I dealt with loads of marketing managers, marketing directors, people that were very, this is my job, I'm the expert,
and protecting of it.
But in the same way, if you see someone with talent, someone who can really do this job well, someone who's gifted in this, you don't want to sort of hemorrhage you don't want to, not hemorrhage, you don't want to sort of prevent them from being all that they are because you feel threatened about your position. You want them to thrive. And I think having that kind of attitude of I'm going to be doing this until someone else comes along who is better placed to do this or more gifted than me, without being threatened. I mean, there's a lot about pride in here. There's a lot about self-reflection, and some people just haven't perhaps got that in them. And I think sadly, many people get to the top through ruthlessness and probably practices that aren't great. I'm not talking about the top of churches, if there is such a thing, but maybe that is a certain type of character that does that. But I think we have to have our eyes open to what it means to be in a position of authority, and not think, well, I'm now at the top of the tree, and I'm going to. So going back to your point, you need to gain more weight before I won't hear your voice until you've got a bit more experience, like I have. I don't know. I don't know this person.
I don't.
But I think we have to be aware of this sort of stuff.
Because you can't see me, I was taking this camera on my motorbike. I didn't have two cameras set up like some of these other things. This is where I just ask Mark, why on earth do you not have women in leadership? That's what this entails. So again, this isn't a rock hurling exercise. This is just to explain it. And I think what I found most interesting, and I keep that question in, but I've tried not to have me because you can't see me and necessarily hear me. But the question I wanted to ask was, if you're concerned about creating obstacles for people to come into the church, then why aren't you recognising women as leaders?
We are probably unique in Red Hill as probably one of the only churches that has male-only elders. Now, in different churches, elders are defined as different things. So I know in the Baptist church it's not quite the same definition of that, but elder being the word that you could translate as elder, overseer, pastor.
Yeah. That's in Timothy.
Yeah, that's where we currently are. That's where that's our conviction. It is not shared by everyone in the church. There are many people who are members of our church that disagree with that. However, whether that is your conviction or not your conviction, it appears that it is a reason that some people won't join our church, because they just think that equals something that I just can't get past. And I completely relate to that. I think this notion of women not being able to lead, or that equals women can't leading, is absolutely not where we're coming from at all. However, because we have male-only eldership, that is a thing that you cannot really get past in terms of having a conversation with someone saying, well, it doesn't really mean that, well, it doesn't really, but it's almost impossible to sort of square that away in a way that sits well with someone where their conviction is this is completely wrong.
Well, because the action speaks louder than words in that respect.
Yeah, it does. So I think it's where we currently are. It's our. I say currently are because it sounds like are we going to suddenly change our mind? But we do have moments in the history of our church, certainly, where we go back to Scripture and we look at it and we think carefully about it and we read the latest writings on it. And I could probably argue both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. It doesn't seem to be preventing people from, or the church growing. It's something we make very clear at the when people want to join the church. I dare say it infuriates many people.
And if you wanted to change it, how would you go about that as a church?
Well, as a church, so being part of Advance, one of the to be an Advance affiliated church or part of that movement, that's one of the things that is a kind of these churches agree with this. Okay. So if we were to decide, actually we think, our conviction is that it's about time that we do recognise that we have female elders and that's where we're going to go. We could do that. We're free to do that. It would mean that we wouldn't be able to relate to those churches in the same way, which is interesting, and you think, but it's only that's the only thing that would be different. Everything else would be the same. And again, and I get that, and
same gospel or whatever.
Exactly. So I see where that can be even making that statement. Can think, well, what kind of movement is are you part of? So but if we wanted to, we could.
Right.
Because how we lead the church, or how we decide what the structure of the church is, how many elders we have, how we have deacons, who are those who are given responsibility to, which are male and female. We feel that's biblical. Is entirely down to us. But I think it's one of those things where you could sit down with someone, and if you wanted to, you could have a debate over it. But if you got your Bibles out and you both used your sort of anchor verses for this, it doesn't go anywhere really, because you've got a really strong argument. That's your conviction. This is where we are, and if you want to be with us and part of us, this is the structure we have. Right. And hopefully you won't find that this is dilutes the message of Jesus in any way, shape or form.
What's interesting for me is I can ask these questions with no vested interest whatsoever, and yet see something that, again, from that observational point, which has it's just like talking about get rid of the obstacles, for me that's quite a clear obstacle, and I'm like, why? It just doesn't, to me it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense why that needs to become like as the Muslims would say, a pillar.
I completely, I see that. Well, without going into in too much depth, because I probably haven't got the brain capacity to do it, but I think there's something in this that is around just roles of men and women, and what we think their roles should be, because I already, as the words coming out of my mouth, I can hear the comments. I can see the comments being written, but to me, although I can see it's a huge obstacle, I don't think, in my experience, it has ever caused what we're doing or what we feel the Lord leading us in. I don't ever feel it's hindered that in any way. But I also know that there are many people that feel that there is a fullness of leading the church and a fullness of what God has for the church that is missing in what we do. And I hear that. And it's as I said, it's a very difficult one to get past with someone where that is their conviction, because ultimately you hit this point of this is what you're.
I want you to agree with me. Well, we don't. So where do you go from there?
And I think, again, this is one of those things where people like to think this should cause a lot more division than it should. In the same way that, and this is going to another extreme completely. If you meet a Muslim in today's current climate, you should hate them, and you shouldn't get on. But actually, of course we can be friends, and of course we can love each other, and of course we can get on with each other, and of course we can disagree with each other and still go out for a coffee and have a chat and really know each other really well. And I think, again, the whole thing, and that might not be a very good example to use in this particular.
Well, it is a good.
thing.
No, it is a good
but we can still get on as we work these things through. And if you feel comfortable in our church and what we do and how we do ministries, and actually the many roles you can play and the things that you can do, if the one thing is I want to lead this church and I'm female and I can't do it, if that's a thing that's just going to be a thing that's going to cause so much problem that you can't be with us, then obviously that's going to sort of answer whether you join us as a church.
But then it's different, because maybe that person does feel called and maybe is called, and that's the community they're part of. That's when it becomes tricky.
It does become tricky, because here's the thing.
Because back to the point of everyone
helping
out each other.
Yeah, the unkind thing to say would be, well, yes, you're part of this church community, and you've been here for years, and you feel your calling is to lead a church, but I can't do it in this church, and this is the church I want to do it in. You could say, well, there are plenty of other churches you could do it. But they say, but I like the flavour and the culture of this church, and that's really hard.
But more than flavour and culture, there have been people that have helped them with that £10, £100 through their letterbox, and they've done it for others. And that's where I think churches like yours and others, it gets really tricky. Now, again, I'm easy for me to say. It's like the gay leadership thing. It's like, as you were saying, with Muslims and this total demonisation of communities that churches sometimes exaggerate. But I just think getting to that point where that person cares for that person, that happens, and then when they leave because of values, or they leave because an issue hasn't been dealt with or hidden, and they leave, they hurt, because that is the community that they helped out, they were listened to, they spent their life on. I mean, I think I agree with that. I think the thing about male-only leadership, that's something that you'd want to get out in the open very early on in people's walk. So I wouldn't want anyone to be in our church for years and years and years and not realise that was the case. So just to answer that, to be invested in a church where you didn't know that, and suddenly, hang on a minute, I thought... And I guess for people that don't know, then they're joining churches, they kind of need to understand this stuff fairly early on.
Well, we do it in our membership classes.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when we introduce people to the church, we talk about this is what expectations of being in this church. This is what you can expect from us, and this is what we expect from you, and this is how we structure the church. Ask away, and there's no, and we answer questions on it. So it's not really it's a thing, because you think that when people find that out for the first time, or people that come to us and they've never been in church, but what, you only have what are you? I get that, I get it,
because like now Abby calls me chauvinistic when I'm like, I don't want to watch women's football, but we're in that society now where we're championing the lionesses, we're championing the women rugby.
That's right. And then it's interesting, in the years that I've led the church, I've had very few people be anywhere near animated with me about what we do and what that particular aspect of church leadership. Had many conversations with people in the church who are part of the church and happy to serve in the church, who feel that we're not, this is something they don't agree with, but they're happy to still be in the church. And again, it's not, it's probably is uncomfortable for them, and they probably do. Well, they do find it difficult, but they're with us and part of what we're doing. But I agree, it's an awkward one. It doesn't feel embarrassing, because it's a conviction the leaders of the church have, but it is it's not an easy question to answer well, because, as I said, because of the very nature of what we do, it equals this, and how doesn't it? And you think, well, I get what you're saying.
And then we just wanted to wrap up. So Mark is on a sabbatical, has been for a few months, and he's got another month left. And I really wanted to ask him, well, what is it that you're going into, this kind of almost school term, 2026, what is it you're going into from your sabbatical? So this is his response. But please do continue to engage with these videos. Please like and subscribe. I've even got an opportunity for you to become a member. It doesn't cost very much, but it kind of encourages me, puts some petrol in my petrol tank and all that kind of stuff. But please continue to be part of this channel. Thank you.
one of the things I heard recently, being on sabbatical, I went to another church and heard someone preaching, and they were talking about the word priority, and this really stuck with me because I thought, this is brilliant. They said the word priority that word was only singular up until a few hundred years ago, and then maybe more recent than that, and then suddenly the word priorities crept in. And there's something about that really rung with me. It really stuck with me, because we have so many priorities, but obviously the very nature of the word, you can't have lots of priorities, you have to have a priority. And I think for me, it's really seeking God, what is the priority for this next period of time? And making it very clear what that priority is, and then running with it. So I think my prayer is that of all of the priorities that I think the church has, Lord, which is the priority that we work on? So I think for me, that having real clarity on that, and maybe having that, and again this is real Christianese, confirmed by other people who have also got a real sense of this is actually what we should be doing. I think having that unity of voice and togetherness as a church in thinking, this is what we should be going towards, is the thing that would give me a real feeling of life. And let's do this, let's move forward with this. So I think that's my prayer, is what is the priority.